So we'll just get started and welcome people in as they come, if they come. I just wanted to say welcome back. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. This week our topic is mindful experiences. And I would like to start off with just seeing if anyone wanted to share a mindful moment that they had this week. I think I've said this almost every week, but for me, my mindful moment comes usually from just getting outside and hearing the birds and seeing the wind in the trees, or just seeing the sun shining or things like that. Just a lot of nature stuff really grounds me and brings me to the present, and that's kind of a mindful moment for me. Nice, relaxing in the sun. Absolutely. It's been hot, but beautiful. The birds definitely, yeah, I don't know what it is. I guess maybe it's because we've had it wasn't too bad of a winter, but it was long. And so the birds are, for some reason, just really get me this spring. Ooh, first kayak ride. That's great. So it sounds like people maybe agree with getting outside and interacting with nature is a great way to stay mindful and in the moment, which is great. Deborah, you are hitting the nail on the head with one of my favorite mindful moments, which is the beach and the ocean and listening to the waves, or really any body of water, honestly. That's one of my favorites too. Awesome. And Insight Timer, you've been able to use that. I'm glad that people have been able to find that and use that to their benefit. That's great. Jogging. Awesome. These are great examples. So today I would like us to start off, and we're actually going to do a little meditation together. I'm going to open it up, take your time, close your eyes, just really take in the moment, and just be present. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. Just try your best to do that, and do it in the way that makes sense for you. Okay. So it's a short one. I think it's about only 3 minutes or so.
The 3-minute breathing space. The 3-minute breathing space is a brief practice. It can be used when we find our thoughts or mood moving in a negative direction. The breathing space provides a way to step out of automatic pilot mode and reconnect with the present moment. Awareness. The first thing we do with this practice, because we want to come into the present moment quickly, is adjusting our posture. Make sure your back is straight and upright, but not stiff, letting the body feel a sense of being present and awake. Now close your eyes. If this feels comfortable, take the first step of becoming aware of what is going on inside you right now. Become aware of what is going on in your mind right now. What thoughts are around? Try to simply notice them and watch them as mental events. So rather than trying to push them away or shut them out, just notice them. Perhaps saying, "Ah, there you are." That's how it is. This is what my mind is thinking right now. In the same way, notice what feelings arise. What physical sensations do you notice? Again, becoming aware of them. Simply noticing whatever is arising in this moment. So you have a sense of what is going on right now. Stepping out of automatic pilot, stepping out of the need to react. Gathering. The second step is to collect your awareness by focusing on a single act, the movement of the breath. So now really gather yourself, redirect your full attention to your breathing. Notice each in-breath and each out-breath as they come in and out. In and out. Think of your breath as an anchor that brings you into the present and helps you tune in to a sense of awareness and stillness. Notice the in-breath and out-breath. Expanding. The third step is allowing your awareness to expand to the entire body, bringing a more spacious awareness to your experience. Letting the breath be present, but in the background. Slowly expand your field of awareness around your breathing. Bring your attention now to the entire length of your body, from head to toe. Start with your breathing, but then slowly include a sense of your body as a whole. Your posture and facial expression. Slowly and gently, when you're ready, open your eyes and return to the room.
So I hope everyone was able to get something from that, whether it just be the guidance or the words, or maybe even just actually that feeling of kind of relaxation. I think I needed that this morning, so that felt really nice. So we're going to dive into our topic today again. And part of being mindful, a core skill of mindfulness and a core how skill is to be non-judgmental. So in mindfulness-based stress reduction, non-judging is one of the first 7 attitudes considered to be the foundation of mindfulness practice. So the others include patience, beginner's mind, trust, non-striving, acceptance, and letting go. So it's not always easy to be non-judging. I think we, as human beings, we have a tendency to judge or just to have criticism or anything like that, and that's normal. In fact, the habits of judging and criticism are really deeply ingrained in all of us, and this is for a wide variety of reasons. It's been long taught that the importance of building a foundation of mindfulness are, again, upon the attitudes of kindness and compassion. And because that judging energy or that judging mind that we tend to have is kind of been ingrained into us, and it's a big thing that we do, and it's almost like it's become a habit. I think sometimes this can get in the way of having that kindness and compassion, so it's really important that we look at that. So in order to have kindness and compassion, we have to adjust, or we have to look at and be curious about how much we judge or how much we criticize. Kindness and compassion is actually a deep friendliness and welcoming, filled with forgiveness and unconditional love. It's a deep human capacity. It's always present, at least potentially. And it can be seen when one observes, especially a mother caring for their child, that kindness or that compassion or that unconditional love that you have with your children is a good example of when these things show up. So kindness and compassion can be a really powerful tool in your mindfulness practice. So all you need to do is admit and allow feelings of kindness and compassion into your path when you're paying attention mindfully. This is easier said than done. When we lack awareness of our own self-criticism and we don't experience much kindness and compassion towards ourselves at times, and for others, this can be really tough. It can be really difficult to include this into our practice when we're so used to, again, we have that habit of being really self-critical or judgmental towards ourselves and others. I would imagine that our judgment of ourselves and that self-criticism is higher, again, for us versus when we're thinking about other people, because we tend to be kinder to others than we can to ourselves, and that's normal too. So sitting with kindness and compassion can help support you through the impacts of deep habits of judging and criticism. So being intentional about giving yourself permission to be kind and compassionate with yourself supports you in the how of being truly non-judgmental. Another way of promoting a balanced view of yourself is by addressing your behaviors and how you treat yourself. I have a question for everyone. Do you tend to think negatively of yourself? And when you do this, when you think negatively of yourself, how do you often behave because of that thought process? I think sometimes I can give an example, I guess, for myself, is that I was going for a walk one day. Normally going for a walk is something that I really enjoy. It really brings me peace. And it's, again, a time to be mindful and just really enjoy myself. And I was finding that my energy was just really bad. It was like an icky energy, and I couldn't really figure out why I was feeling that way. And when I asked myself that question, like, what's going on? Like, what are you thinking about? Like, why aren't you able to just enjoy this moment? I came to the realization that I was really criticizing myself in that moment, and I was thinking about something else. And again, that really deep self-critical voice was coming up, and that was causing me to be snippy. It was causing me to feel maybe more anxious than usual. Like, it was really affecting my behavior and affecting how I was feeling in the moment. And I think that happens often, and maybe it's become such an unconscious process that we can't identify that maybe it was a thought that we had that's causing maybe us to feel a little bit icky or off, or we're maybe treating others in a more snippy attitude, or we push people away, or etc. Right? But if we can tune in and notice, like, is this a self-critical voice that's coming up? Maybe we can understand a little bit better why we're behaving the way that we are. And again, it took simply noticing the fact that I was having that thought, and then challenging that thought, and kind of giving myself some compassion, and it instantly shifted my mood. So again, it doesn't have to require much more than just noticing that critical thought and being able to pinpoint it, and then that can help you shift your energy or shift the attention. Yeah, I think it's great to again challenge those critical thoughts with a positive thought. That's a really great way to overcome those things. That pressure to be perfect. I think that's something that maybe all of us can relate to on a certain level. And it's not silly, but it is impossible. I think, like I said, we can all relate to that in some way. And it is what it is. It comes from maybe childhood. It comes from experiences in school. It comes from expectations, or there's lots of different reasons why we have the need to feel perfect or to be perfect. But it is, you're right, it is impossible to be perfect, but it's about, again, noticing that, having an awareness of it, and then being able to challenge that thought process and come up with a kinder, more realistic expectation of yourself, rather than kind of berating yourself for having it in the first place. I guess maybe on the opposite end of talking to yourself, maybe negatively, do you treat yourself as somebody deserving of fun, deserving of recognition for your achievements? Or do you often neglect yourself, talk down to yourself, and minimize your achievements, right? So it's not even just being critical of ourselves, but it also involves allowing or giving ourselves permission to have fun, and also acknowledging and recognizing our accomplishments, rather than just saying, and instead of minimizing those things and saying, well, no, it was just a fluke, or no, anyone would have got, like if we minimize those things, if we minimize, no matter how big or small the accomplishment is, if we continue to minimize those, you're literally telling yourself every day that you're not important and your achievements aren't important. So if we can challenge that and start giving ourselves credit for small things, it could be as simple as, waking up and drinking a glass of water, right? It doesn't have to be a major thing that happens, like winning a gold medal, or getting a promotion at work, or I can't think of any other examples, but it doesn't have to be a major thing that you can only recognize yourself for big accomplishments. I think we should like recognize even the smallest things that we do that are good for us and that make us feel proud. And if we continue to acknowledge those things, that can build up over time. And it can also build up an awareness and a comfortability with acknowledging our positive qualities and our achievements, so that we're able to acknowledge bigger things over time. Yeah, I think we can all relate to the idea of having expectations on us that we don't necessarily want or sometimes always agree with, but we still feel that pressure to live up to certain standards or expectations. But again, we have to ask ourselves, are these expectations that we really have of ourselves, or do they come from other people? And if they come from other people, do we want those expectations? And if we don't, how do we change that? How do we get out of that mindset that we have to live up to expectations of others? And what would happen if we didn't? If we decided to set our own standard and our own expectations of ourselves that were more realistic? What would happen if we were to do that? I would imagine that most of us can relate to the idea of picking out our flaws and really struggling to notice our positive qualities. That's another thing that we talk about later on, I think in module 6 or 7. But that idea of being able to notice our positive qualities, and again, no matter how big or small they are, to notice those and accept them and really believe them. I think often a lot of us really wait for other people to tell us things about ourselves rather than coming to our own conclusion about that. And sometimes that can be tough if we don't surround ourselves with people who are lifting us up, or if we're surrounded by people who kind of tear us down more often. If we're constantly waiting for external validation, then that can really make ourselves feel bad, I guess. So being able to acknowledge those things for ourselves is really important. And I think both like Deborah and Beverly gave examples of things that happen when you give, and sometimes that feels good, and you don't need I guess the recognition for that, because it's just for you and it makes you feel nice. But other times when we give, we do want to receive that appreciation, and we do want to know that what we did was received well, and that we're getting credit for that. So I think it's really important to I guess to know maybe when it's important to you to get that validation, and maybe where that's coming from, and when it doesn't really matter if you get that validation. And again, are you able to give yourself that validation and say, you know what, I did a good job. I know that I did the work that I was supposed to do, and that's enough for me. So it's kind of like both of those questions. Having compassion emphasizes some key topics. One is awareness. So being attentive or sensitive to the fact that some sort of suffering is occurring, right? So in my example that I mentioned earlier, I started feeling just off and strange, and I started asking myself the question that, like, why am I suffering? Why am I feeling uncomfortable, right? So that I developed an awareness, or I practiced awareness in the sense that I was trying to figure out what was going on for me. So suffering in anyone's case could mean some distressing struggle with emotional pain. It could be mental pain, it could be physical pain, or all of the above. So suffering in general it can be a wide range of things. It doesn't just have to be like a physical pain or an emotional pain. We also have to normalize. So normalizing, it helps recognize that experiencing this sort of pain is universal. We all experience pain at some point to varying degrees. The fact that we experience pain isn't a fault or failing of ours. We're not to blame for our pain, and we're not alone in that pain either. So this is a really important one, in the sense that a lot of time when we feel we have a sense of suffering or emotional pain, we tend to blame ourselves. We tend to feel a sense of shame about that. And that makes us feel like we're failing in some ways, or we're not good enough, or whatever, fill in the blank you want to. But this is pain in itself is a universal concept. We've all experienced it, maybe some more than others, but we all understand the concept of pain because we've all felt it in some degree. So this is a universal thing, and it's important to not blame ourselves or consider it a fault of our own that we feel that way, because this is something that everyone feels. And I'm not talking about the reason behind the pain. because that's a whole separate thing, but I'm talking about the feeling of pain itself, having that feeling. That's a universal concept. That's something that is not your fault because it's just a feeling at the end of the day. So another part of self-compassion or having compassion for ourselves is kindness. So not shying away from or ignoring that pain, but meeting that pain with a feeling of kindness and care and warmth and concern. So feeling it and allowing it into our presence, instead of being like, nope, I don't want to feel that. Or on the other hand, I guess you could ruminate in it too. But if you allow it, if you welcome it, I guess, which is a strange kind of dynamic there, to welcome your pain, because I think no one wants to feel pain. So it's not about saying, oh, I want to feel this, but it's also like acknowledging I have to feel this in order for me to move through it. And when you can welcome that pain with a sense of kindness or warmth, then you're in care and curiosity about where it's coming from or what's happening for you and what your experience is, then again, you can develop more of an awareness, and that can help you figure out what's going on and maybe how you can move past it. So lastly, we're looking at alleviation. So focusing our energy on ways to alleviate that pain. So once you're able to identify what it is, you're able to offer it a little bit of kindness, and you're able to normalize that experience for yourself and say, you know what, I'm not judging myself for this moment or for this feeling. This is a feeling and I have it. Then you can move through to alleviation and trying to figure out what it is that can help you through that. And this may provide further comfort and caring actions, providing helpful perspective regarding whatever the trouble is, or even having the strength and courage to take other necessary actions to address the problem being faced. So self-compassion involves doing all four of these things for ourselves when we're struggling. So being aware of our own pain, whatever that may be, understanding that while pain is hard, it is a normal human experience, and it's not a failing on our own part, and we're not alone in that pain. And then involves directing feelings of kindness and care towards ourselves, which can be tough sometimes. Just as we might do for somebody else who's struggling, it's really important to offer that same kindness to ourselves. When we think of being in pain and we think of opening up to somebody, we often think of, leaning on that person for support and having them offer words of kindness to us, or just compassion and warmth, or even physical touch in some way. So if we can, you can hug yourself. Honestly, that feels good sometimes. But if you can offer that kind of emotional support and to yourself, that can be really helpful in managing your feelings and overcoming that feeling of pain. And then you also need to focus your attention, again, like we said, on how we might improve our own pain and move through that struggle that we're facing. So once we kind of allow it into our consciousness, allow it into our present moment, and we can identify it, it's about how do we move forward from this? What can I do to help myself move forward, instead of just allowing it to sit there and to kind of bubble and boil there. So the need to receive care and nurturing evolved as a strong need within all mammals, including humans. Being cared for from birth is vital to our survival. If we don't get cared for, if we don't have somebody caring and nurturing for us, we won't make it. And without it, we really struggle to thrive. So some of us have unfortunately experienced what we call adverse childhood experiences. As a result of these adversities, our stress response is likely going to be higher, your threat system is going to be overreactive, and for some of us, and maybe all the time, this might even happen for the smallest of circumstances where your stress response kind of skyrockets and shoots up. So this can make it really hard to feel that sense of care or nurturing because of the fact that our stress response is always kind of high, and we didn't necessarily get the care and nurturing that we needed as kids. On the other hand, the success of human race as a species has really depended on us receiving care and being motivated to give care to other beings. So in reflection of this pandemic that we're all experiencing globally, this is where self-compassion can really benefit us most, because we're in a place where we need to understand how to care for ourselves, because we aren't necessarily being able to get that care and nurturing from other people that we normally would right now. But yet at the same time, we also need to be very mindful that we can still care for others and still give to others in times like this as well. And this is an essential part of the, I guess, humanity thriving and surviving. So when self-compassion is working well, when we all are working together and supporting each other, we're able to flourish, and that leads to having resilience, which is another really important factor as we think about moving out of this pandemic and kind of going back to a new normal. Resilience is going to be really important for us to move forward and to kind of put all of this behind us. So question for everybody, what are the ways that you show your self-care? I think for myself, a big one is putting myself to bed early. That's a way that I show my self-care. If I'm staying up late and waking up too early or just not getting enough sleep, that's a sure way to know that I'm not caring for myself in the morning, or just caring for, I guess, in general, not just the morning, but sleep is really important. And I definitely thrive when I have enough sleep. So putting myself to bed, even if I may not want to go to bed, is something that I've noticed is something I do when I'm really caring for myself. Exercise is being mentioned a lot, yeah. Tub, breakfast before work, take a bath, massage, yeah, these are great. Massages, yeah, having good food. Yeah, so these are all basic things, right, that, like, I mean, we tend to eat, right? We're always going to eat. We all need to eat. Kind of caring for ourselves with exercise, or with taking a bath, or yeah, just doing our hair, something as simple as that, just to show yourself, hey, I'm important. My energy is important, and I want to give myself a little time to care for myself in that way. I think those are great. So as we become more practiced at using mindfulness for breathing, body sensations, and routine daily activities, so we can learn to be mindful of our thoughts and our feelings, to become observers, and then more accepting of these things. This results in less distressing feelings and increases our ability to enjoy our lives. So with mindfulness, even the most disturbing sensations, feelings, thoughts, and experiences can be viewed from a wider perspective as a passing event in the mind, rather than kind of seeing it as encompassing us, as kind of, or generalizing to us, or as it being necessarily a true fact. When we're practiced in using mindfulness, we can use it in even times of intense distress. When we're becoming mindful of the actual experience as an observer, using mindful breathing and focusing our attention on the breathing, listening to distressing thoughts mindfully, recognizing them as merely thoughts, and breathing with them, allowing them to happen without believing them or arguing with them. And if these thoughts are too strong or too loud, then we can move our attention to our breath, the body, and the sounds around us. So the reason we had that ocean playing in the background there is that this can be a really great example of mindfulness. So if we think of our mind as the surface of an ocean, there are always waves on the water. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, sometimes it's calm and you can't even tell that they're happening. The water's waves are kind of churned up by external factors like the wind, which comes and goes and varies in direction and intensity. Just as the winds of our lives and the stress in our lives will change our own feelings, and it can stir up kind of waves in our minds, right? So waves are a good way to kind of think about the thoughts that we might be having on a daily basis, because again, it's constantly changing and evolving with what's happening what's happening around us. There's a great quote by John Kabat-Zinn, who's a mindfulness, kind of like a leader of mindfulness. And he says, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So it's important to think about that even though the waves are happening, you can learn to cope with them or manage them or work with them. They don't have to become something to be feared or that we can't manage. So for most people, being compassionate towards themselves, and therefore it activates that soothe system that we were talking about last week, for those of you who were here and remember that. But this doesn't happen naturally for all of us. And again, like we talked about earlier, whether you've had kind of adverse experiences in your life, if you have, your threat system may be overactive and always in that survival mode or that defense mode. And that lack of awareness that we kind of touched on or have been touching on, that autopilot or lack of awareness, is related to being mindless. And our thinking brain shuts down when we're not able to be compassionate with ourselves, right? So when we get into those kind of threat situations where we have a thought or maybe something happens to us and we start feeling a certain way, this can activate that threat system. And then we are kind of in overdrive and we're in survival mode and fight, flight, or freeze. When we have self-compassion, we're able to kind of turn off those threat systems and bring our soothe system back online. As we kind of have been speaking about, self-criticism can really easily roll off our tongue. It's a style of thinking that involves internal self-talk being highly negative, disparaging, and berating. Self-criticism can really, like we've talked about, activate our threat system. And once that threat system is active, it responds to those critical events, and it keeps that threat system active. So if we're constantly thinking negative thoughts, that's keeping our threat system online, right? So if we're already primed in that threat system because of our own thoughts and our own mind, when we encounter something stressful and when we experience something stressful, we're already in that mode. So it makes it so much easier to enhance that, I guess. Whereas if our mind is more gentle, if our mind is more self-compassionate towards us, then maybe we're going to be able to cope with or manage situations in a very different way because we're not already heightened. It has to take that event to heighten us. We're not already there. We're not already sitting in that threat zone. So the content of our self-critical thoughts can be really cruel, and the tone can be really cold or harsh or attacking. It's like we're really telling ourselves off or reprimanding ourselves in a really unkind way. This thinking style occurs within all of us to varying degrees, and it's really common in our society. You'll tend to hear most people refer to themselves as, oh, I'm so stupid, or oh, I'm an idiot, even when they make just a small mistake. This may be at the milder end of self-criticism, but others may routinely speak to themselves really harshly, and frequently hurl themselves a barrage of like really harsh and really terrible kind of mental abuse, I guess, to themselves. Really harsh critics may experience a sense of self-loathing, self-hatred, self-disgust, and they may have that belief that they don't deserve to treat themselves any better because it's so natural and so common for them to be in that kind of harsh tone with themselves. So some common examples of self-critical statements might look like, I'm an idiot, what a moron, I'm useless and pathetic, I'm so hopeless, you shouldn't have done that, why did I do that, you should have known better, I never get it right, you may as well give up now, and there's no point, why bother? Does anyone relate to any of those? And can you think of times where you've said a lot of those things to yourself during the day? Yeah, the I'm so stupid one. Yeah, I think we can all relate to, oh, like, I can't believe I did that, or like, oh, that was so dumb, or that was so stupid. These are more mild forms of self-criticism, but they still, again, send a message to ourselves, hey, I'm an idiot and I shouldn't have done that. And that doesn't make our mental space a positive area or a happy place. So you'll notice that some self-critics refer to themselves in the first person, so I am, whereas others may refer to themselves using second person, so you are. So it depends on, I guess, where you're lying, I guess, in your own head. And you'll also notice that maybe self-criticism involves some of the following unhelpful thinking styles. So labeling, so making global and derogatory statements about ourselves based on one behavior in a specific situation. So kind of generalizing, so one specific scenario to encompass us as a whole. The shoulds, so shoulding, always using should statements to put unreasonable demands or pressures on ourselves. And that overgeneralization, so taking one negative instance and concluding that that applies to everything. So this can be part of that self-critical thought process as well. So in order to be able to respond to ourselves compassionately, we need to be aware that we are struggling in the first place. We need to be aware when our mind leaps into self-critical thinking, which only causes us to manifest our own struggles even more. So slowing ourselves down in order to see the whirlwind direction that we may be falling into. And again, getting kind of caught up in that really self-critical thought process. I'm sure we can all remember a time where we've thought of a scenario, maybe something that happened earlier in our day, and 10 minutes later, we're kind of in this rabbit hole of all the things that we could have said, or if I would have said this, maybe this would have happened, and just are replaying the scenario in our mind, right? So when we have a critical thought, this tends to lead to that negative self-talk loop, and we kind of just stay stuck in it and we go round and round. So it's really important, maybe this week we can all make an effort to notice when we're getting into those self-critical kind of mind loops, and notice when we're starting to say any of the statements before, with the shoulds, or you're labeling yourself, or you're telling yourself you're stupid, or you're saying that you're an idiot, or that you shouldn't have done that, or any, I guess, fill in the blank, whatever statement it is that you have, that you tend to criticize yourself for. Maybe it's about, again, developing that awareness, notice when this happens, and then normalize that, and kind of give yourself, maybe kind of challenge that belief with a more positive belief. So some things that can really help us in terms of developing more compassion to ourselves are some of the examples that we have been talking about lately, in terms of, or throughout this whole story, all the past three and now 4 weeks. But meditation can be really helpful in terms of, again, developing that awareness that we need to be able to notice when we're getting really self-critical. Taking deep breaths that can center us back into the moment and get us out of that mind loop and that self-critical thought process. Attention retraining. Again, mindfulness is all about attention retraining. So noticing when you're falling into that self-critical thought pattern, and then doing things to alleviate that so that it's not as intense, and that you can change the direction of your thoughts almost immediately, really. And affirmations are another great one. As we kind of talked about this whole time, is that self-critical voice can be really strong. So it's really important for everyone to acknowledge their positive qualities and give yourself the affirmations that maybe you're seeking from other people. Because when, again, like I said, when we're seeking validation or acknowledgement or encouragement from others, that can be really disappointing because sometimes we may not get the acknowledgement that we're looking for. So if we can give that to ourselves, then we're not going to rely on it from other people. It feels nice when other people compliment us, but if we have that belief and that kindness towards ourselves, and we know that we did a good job, that can make us feel really good just on a general level without the need for anything extra. So that is our presentation for today. I know we're finished up a bit early, but that's okay. I'm here for questions if anyone has any that they'd like to ask, or anything that came up during the session that they had more questions about, or maybe just noticed that it was something that they hadn't thought about before. But yeah, anything that anyone would like to say, I'm here to answer. Ooh, good books on mindfulness. A lot. John Kabat-Zinn. I don't know if I can give titles. I'm blanking. I can see them in my head and I can't really think of them out loud. John Kabat-Zinn's a really great option. Eckhart Tolle is a really good one as well. In terms of, I think he has one called the New Earth. That one was good. Yeah, I would say John Kabat-Zinn, Eckhart Tolle, anything by Deepak Chopra too, that he's really great. If anyone, there's also a great app, what's it called? I think it's called the Oprah and Deepak Chopra app. And they put out free meditation series every once in a while. And they're really good. They kind of start with like a talk or a topic, and then it moves into a meditation. So they're about 20 minutes long, that you have to purchase them after the fact. But like I said, I think every couple of months they offer a free series, and they're really good. So that could be an option for you as well. Sorry, not John Kabat-Zinn, John Kabat-Zinn. Here, I can write it out. If anyone doesn't have any questions, you're free to go. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it, and I enjoy doing this every week with you. Hopefully I'll see you guys next week for week 5, but otherwise you can take off today. We're finished a little early, and enjoy the rest of your day. But if you have questions, please stay and feel free to ask.